Well, that didn't take long. So after months and months of what feels like a drought in the open world 3D platformer space, the first big game to debut on the Switch 2 isn't a Super Mario game, but instead Donkey Kong Bananza. And as you could probably already expect, speedrunners have been going bananas. But this game was actually developed by the same team that made Odyssey, so it's no surprise to see how fluid the engine is, allowing for tons of different movement options and methods for completing objectives. If you clicked on this video and know absolutely nothing about this game, to give a brief overview, Donkey Kong likes bananas.
Oh brother, this guy stinks!
I mean, that pretty much is the game, but more specifically, the game opens up with Donkey Kong at Ingot Isle as he mines in search of Banandium gems. Shortly afterwards, a rival mining company, Voidco, sucks up all the nearby gems, leaving Ingot Isle to plummet below the surface. As DK makes his way through the area, he eventually finds a rock, which turns out to be Pauline. And with advice from the ancient elders, they pursue even deeper towards the Earth's core to find the legendary Banandium root to grant their wishes. That's about all I'd really like to get into story-wise, as this video is much more focused on the current speedrun strategies that have developed since launch. With that being said, I do hope you all enjoyed this video. So ever since this game's release, speedrunners have been competing neck to neck, grinding 10+ hour sessions for a shot at the world record. Some of the contenders include Welsh speedrunner Jay, Irish speedrunner Neil, and Japanese runner Jakezsr, which at the time of recording are all hovering around 1 hour and 20 minute times, with Jay currently holding the world record. Just like I mentioned before, the game starts out in Ingot Isle, just below the Earth's surface, and right off the bat, we can see Jakezsr make use of the fastest movement option, turf surfing, where DK grabs a chunk out of the ground to coast along the surface. You can also spam the boost option to push forward a little faster. This is pretty much the fastest way to move around, assuming you're moving in a straight line or down a hill. The terrain used does matter, as dirt, sand, grass, and other softer material can be grabbed immediately, while others may take longer to pull out than the time they'd save in speed. This matters less later on with the Kong Bananza transformation, as it's strong enough to pull up just about anything. You'll also notice Jakezsr drives right past several Banandium gems, and that's because as opposed to a game like Super Mario Odyssey, collectibles aren't needed in order to progress other than 2,999 gold for a toll in the Hilltop layer, which is why we can see some intentional gold farming here. This is also because the game rewards a player depending on how much terrain they destroy, so by breaking enough terrain in Ingot Isle and Lagoon, the game rewards DK 900 gold, and then the rest is collected manually. Gold is also useful as it gives Bananergy, which is necessary for DK's Bananza transformations. Also, if enough gold is collected while transformed, the Bananza form can pretty much be maintained indefinitely. The only requirement for beating the game is getting to the end of each layer and defeating the final boss, which is why the completion times for this game seem to be all over the place, from some people choosing to spend their afternoon destroying the entire terrain of each level. Towards the end of the first area will be a massive stockpile of gold to collect, and then these bananas can be smacked to trigger the cutscene. This next section is really where we can see a bunch of neat movement options come into play. While in the air, punches can be performed to extend air time by a bit, and jumping while surf turfing can be used to preserve more of the chunk, which may explain why you see runners jumping in spots that may otherwise seem random. It's also possible to cancel surf shortly after it's performed by quickly double tapping ZL to give a slight speed boost in the air, as well as allow for a double jump to clear large gaps. After hitting the checkpoint up top, Jakezsr will head into a mineshaft to discover Pauline in rock form and quickly take out these enemies. Here you can see Jakezsr roll punching, which is the fastest way to take out enemies and clear terrain. It's pretty OP, and usually the most optimal choice no matter what's in front of you. Also, rather than backtracking through the area, Jakezsr instead fast travels with the Blue Eel elevator system to return to the entrance. It should be pointed out that DK can climb up almost any surface in the game, and it's also possible to climb a bit faster with some well-timed jumps like you can see him do here. Once this first rock monster mini-boss is taken out and the machine is destroyed, a bundle of Banandium gems will spawn and lure DK downwards to the next layer, completing the tutorial section. Now that you pretty much understand the basics of the game, I'm going to skip around a bit to the more interesting parts of the run, but feel free to check out whatever the current world record is on speedrun.com if you want to see the full run in its current state. So like I said before, there aren't any real requirements for reaching the exit in most layers, so it's sort of difficult to call certain things skips, as reaching the goal by any means is kind of the point of the game. Like sure, we could probably assume that a massive gap that's normally cleared with a dropped bridge is most likely the intended way to play, but also what is exactly stopping the player from making a massive poop bridge and clearing the gap that way? Like if the devs didn't want people to get creative and find new ways to solve problems, they probably would have made more requirements for completing each layer. With that being said, of course that doesn't take away from these gap jumps being insanely cool and flashy to pull off. Following every layer past Lagoon, there will be a short auto-scroller segment of DK plummeting downwards. This can actually be sped up slightly by punching downwards in a rhythm. There's actually a visual cue you can see for this when DK gets a speed boost, as the screen juts forward for a second, which is the timing window you want to have to input the next punch to continually chain the speed boost. Surprisingly, this can save roughly 45 seconds throughout the duration of the run, opposed to doing nothing at all. I think what's also been interesting is seeing the differences in terms of routing from different runners to complete the same objectives. And yet somehow, even though they'll take different routes, the end timings end up being nearly the same. There's even slight differences in boss strategies, as we can see Hadix choosing to throw a rock at this boss's head at the start, and then later jump on his head with rolling punches to finish him off, whereas Neil chooses to jump on the head right away, and then focus on destroying the monster's feet for the second part. Again, it's difficult to say whose strat is really faster here, assuming perfect execution. There will be a handful of times throughout the run where music discs need to be collected to unlock the Bananza transformations, each of which are super overpowered in their own right. The only two that are required to beat the game are the Kong and Elephant forms, but the Ostrich form currently saves so much time throughout the run that it's worth it to unlock it as well. The Kong form is pretty much just a stronger version of DK with a super punch. But Ostrich is even more busted, as it allows DK to literally fly in the air by using a technique known as flutter stalling. By mashing the flutter and punch buttons rapidly will cause DK to preserve his height, allowing him to cross large gaps. This makes the glide ability the only power-up worth learning in the game, as it only makes flutter stalling even more broken, and then it's made even more powerful with a chunk in hand, as it seems to allow you to glide for a longer distance with a longer attack animation. Once this form is unlocked, speedrunners can literally beeline to each objective, as any obstacles or gaps that may be in the way can be glided over easily. A little while after this, the run begins to spice up once again as runners return to the hilltop layer to face off against Void Kong. Jade does a great job here reacting to Void's teleport locations, throwing chunks at perfect timings to hit him at all spawn locations. He also does a manipulation here by waiting for a moment before heading in to defeat Void before he can warp away to save a second or two. The following fight with Void is scripted, so it's pretty simple for all the runners to get through easily. Next up in the run is a quick boss fight versus this bird boss, and then DK unlocks the elephant transformation. The elephant form has a handful of uses throughout the run with its suction ability, but the only reason it's currently grabbed is because it's the only way to obtain this key. After this, the final bird fight is dealt with, and runners move on to the landfill lair. This level includes the first out of bounds strat used in the run. After scaling all the way up this wall, there's a small pocket you can bash DK's head into, and with a well-timed punch, it's possible to clip right through the rocks. This leads to a platform where DK can jump off and continue free falling to the section below, and then use the ostrich to glide inwards and back in bounds. This saves upwards to 30 seconds in the speedrun, assuming it's pulled off quickly. Afterwards, DK can continue heading even lower to face off against the Pika Bruiser. The Elephant Inhale ability actually destroys this boss super quickly, leaving it wide open for an all-out roll attack. And that's pretty much the fight. The vast majority of the run after this point is mostly just movement and boss fights, so maybe I should spend a little bit more time explaining some of the more optimized movement options. I don't want to get too in-depth into the minutia, as this video isn't meant to be a tutorial, but I will have 2 tutorials linked in the description, covering the more basic movement options we discussed earlier by Jakezsr, and also this fat tutorial by Twirly. If you watch any DK Bananza speedrunners, you might hear them say the word fat a bunch and start getting offended on Donkey Kong's behalf, but really what they're talking about are fast air turf surfs. These are performed by executing a jump and then immediately turf surfing after jumping to allow for fast movement while jumping through the air. If a jump is performed slightly after performing a fat, DK will stall in the air long enough to be able to jump out of the turf surf and then roll for max distance. It's little movement options like this that can make a big difference in a speedrun, and if you look closely enough, you can see speedrunners performing fats pretty commonly. But one movement tech you probably won't see from speedrunners anytime soon is the chunk triple jump. For some reason, if a jump input is performed right after pulling a chunk out of the ground, DK will get an extra jump. And then if you include the jump out of surfing, you can effectively get 3 jumps in total. But that's not all. Since by performing this, DK will have a chunk in his hand, this allows him to combine chunk triple jumps with fats to become extremely mobile in the air. Not only that, but because DK gets 3 jumps, you can actually chain 2 fats together for even more distance, but this probably isn't too useful for how difficult it is, but it is pretty cool. In the background, you can see a couple segments Twirly put together to show off some of the applications of the CTG, FAT, bacon, lettuce, tomato, or whatever the community wants to call it. but holy shit, is it super cool, and could potentially result in a route without obtaining the ostrich later on. But then again, this trick is extremely difficult and frame tight, so who knows if we'll ever see enough risk reward potential to see it used outside of a few early game jumps. The only other tech that isn't currently used in runs, but inevitably will be, is juice boosting. How it works is by combining the slowdown effect from consuming an apple or melon juice with a rail to give an insane speed boost. This is so broken and gives so much speed, you can even clip through walls. Currently there's only 2 rails where this tech would be applicable to be performed, and gives the most benefit in the feast layer, where it can be used to clip out of bounds and skip the Mad Mixer boss fight. Including the time it takes to collect the melon juice, this can save roughly 20 seconds, but you only get 1 attempt at pulling it off, and there are so many other spots to lose runs that it currently is only used to save dead attempts. And yeah, while this is a relatively easy video game made for kids, a lot of the boss fights, especially in the endgame, are super easy to lose runs to. Not only are some of the boss fights a bit laggy, resulting in input drops, basic enemies and hazards within boss fights can take 3 to 4 hearts out easily, and since runners only have 3 hearts total, so many runs are lost to getting insta-killed, which is why we probably won't be seeing a lot of crazy risky strats implemented until the game gets closer to its ultimate skill ceiling. There's a very small margin of error in this game, and there are so many hitboxes that are way bigger than they appear, and tiny mistakes in movement add up so quickly. As of the making of this video, Jay currently has a world record of 1 hour, 20 minutes, and 24 seconds, so the race is on to see who can be the first to get sub 120. So if you want to check out some of the contenders I've shared in this video, I'll have their Twitch URLs in the description. That's about all I wanted to cover for this game, as the Proud and Speedrun strats are still in development, so it doesn't make sense to cover a bunch of stuff that could likely be made irrelevant in a month, but I do hope you all enjoyed. As for myself, I might consider running this game at some point, but currently have other projects I'm enjoying more, and I'm holding out for an even bigger release like a new Super Mario or GTA 6 to degen away my life on, and I'm going to spend more time playing this game casually. Because the next time a big game comes out, I'd really like to put my everything into it. Play it for 10 plus hours a day like these guys did, and hyper focus on getting good and making the game as fast as possible, and this game just wasn't it for me. Not every game can be good as Gollum. Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, as it's the best way to show support, and subscribe for more speedrunning related content. As always, I hope you all have a beautiful life.